You're great again. Mugga, mugga, mugga. Wonder if Randy, I wonder if that's the sound that a Godzilla Megatron would make. You know, Godzilla had that great ear-piercing screech. You know, this guy is probably like the maga, 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 maga. Just
And
shut
like a
up.
poorly dubbed kung fu movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean,
Well, let's not insult those. Those are great too.
oh, I
But
love them.
yeah.
I absolutely love them.
But
But
we have to understand that yes, we know he was elected president. Okay, fine. And people are still saying, well, you know, better him than, you know, I don't agree with him, but better him than Hillary. They still don't understand that that ship has sailed. Why did we get Trump as the presidential nominee and ultimately at the result of the elections, which I think are completely flawed at this point now, have been flawed for the past 20 some years. Why did we end up with this? It's more of the same. Why? Because people do not want to have their little boats rocked. Guess what? I don't.
of course not.
You don't want your boat rocked? Don't bring these concerns to me. Don't talk down to me. Don't think of me as an individual who doesn't understand what's going on with this world. Because you don't want your boat rocked? Fine. I'll just capsize it for you. And then it's time for you to either sink or swim. You know, that's how it's going.
That's what they need.
Yeah, that's how it has to be. Trump has to be willing to be held accountable for his actions. The words that came out of his mouth as he was wiping the drivel off of his chin, if he's not willing to be held accountable, then he's no different than Obama, no different than George W. Bush, no different than Clinton, no different than George H.W. Bush, no different than Reagan, and so on down the line all the way back. With the exception of Coolidge and possibly James K. Polk.
You know, what it tells me above anything else is just that we have seemingly lost this ability to think for ourselves and to act for ourselves. And as a result, we just start looking for these messianic figures that will somehow bring about great change or that will somehow magically bring us into a better future, a better tomorrow, what have you. And the more I think about it, and the more that this comes to the epicenter for me, the more I realize that it's both sides of the political spectrum that have been playing this sort of dog and pony show. They've been going out there doing smoke and mirrors over and over again, and for what purpose? You see, Comey, the sacking of Comey himself is not all that important. We know that the president of these United States of America is certainly well within his rights to remove somebody who serves at his pleasure. But again, what is one thing that you and I have oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, if it isn't that we always have to take into mind perceptions, even false perceptions with respect to the arena of American politics can oftentimes matter more than reality. And we know that the Fabian socialist leftist-controlled salivating mainstream media is going to do whatever they can to attack the right, even if those who are proclaiming to be stalwart members of the right or conservatives who aren't are actually pushing their leftist agenda. It's that they want their own brand of it. In fact, it's like this internet meme I've seen in the annals of social media that shows the cycle of socialism. Socialism is implemented. Socialism fails. Oh, that wasn't true socialism. Rinse and repeat. That is the mentality that someone like Donald Trump is going to utilize and is going to implement and is going to adopt as his own, but it does not mean that it's going to help us. And it does not mean that his opponents on the left are going to ignore this opportunity to pounce upon it, because they're going to see this as the perfect opportunity to further their propagandist narrative and agenda. And make no bones about it, folks, the rank and file of the graduates of Pavlov's School of Journalism for the salivating mainstream media, they are ardent, incessant, vicious, even propagandists. That's why we all have heard this fake news, fake news, fake news. That was Trump trying to counteract it. And what we end up with as an end result from all of this is that there is no media outlet or source that people trust, and that's by design. It's by design to make people just kind of rawly emote, so that they become more malleable in the hands of this rogue, tyrannical, and ultimately illegitimate federal government and leviathan of an administrative state, so that people aren't willing to go out and hold them accountable. I understand that it requires us to exert energy, to be proactive, to take a stance that is necessary to ensure that our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights are protected. But again, folks, we cannot look to messianic figures to work from within the government to save us from the government. If you really want to find the saviors of these United States of America, mightn't I make the suggestion that you take a good look in the mirror? Because that is how our founding fathers had designed this system to work. That is the approach they believed was necessary. And again, it comes back to this notion that our founding fathers viewed the federal government as nothing short of a necessary evil. Certainly not something that you would want to entrust with carte blanche and this sort of blanket power and authority that we have in these past several successive decades and generations.
Here's the thing, our founding fathers didn't look to messianic figures to do for them what they were perfectly capable of doing for themselves. And you know what, folks? What's this? Oh, yeah, that's right. It's a mirror. Two of them, side by side. Yeah, I have one. Get your own. If need be, Randy, if we have to, I'm sure we could figure out some way to get mirrors dispensed to everybody in this country. Because see, when the founding fathers, they took it upon themselves, they put their faith in God to guide them and direct them for them to be able to do the right thing. Because they understood that God wasn't going to do this for them. Nobody was going to do this for them except them. This is why we have such illustrious and great documents such as the Declaration of Independence, our shared United States Constitution, and so on. Why? They took the bull by the horns and ran with it. They stood up because they would not tolerate individuals like Comey or individuals like Breitbart News, Sunshine Press, George Soros, Paul Manafort, all of these individuals, every single one of them. And dare I even say Sean Hannity, Ann Coulter, Lush Bimbo, even to a certain degree, Mark Levin. However, Mark Levin has been redeeming himself quite a bit. And that's fine. See, redemption is a wonderful thing. Redemption.
Well, wait, Jeremy, would you say it's safe to assume that Comey has been Bill O'Reilly'd?
Hey, come on now. Wait a second. The spin stops where? Oh, wait a second. Comey's head is probably still spinning.
The spin stops in the bedrooms of the women I'm sexually
right.
Yeah.
But the larger point I'm driving at is with redemption. See, here's the thing. It's a beautiful thing. Redemption is the acknowledgement, the actualization, and the realization that you made a bad choice. And the implementation of taking corrective measures to make sure that you don't make that bad choice again. It's a wonderful thing. It's called making a mistake, folks. People do make mistakes. However, when people want to continuously make the mistakes and then push it off onto somebody else, like some kind of hypochondriac, you know, remote destroying individual that doesn't want to take self responsibility for their own actions, but they want to blame everybody else, even people who are trying to help them. Say, look, you can't look at things this way. You have to look at them at this. Look at it from this perspective. No, okay, well, yeah. No, nope, I tried that. You're wrong, you're wrong, you're wrong. I'm right. I'm an expert in what I talk about. Shut up. Just stop. Randy and I, we don't consider ourselves to be experts of just of anything, really, because no one can ever truly be an expert in anything. Why? Because you never stop learning as long as you're drawing a breath. The second you stop learning is, well, you're dead. Period. Mm-hmm. Period. Because life is nothing but a long, drawn-out learning process.
That's exactly what it is. And that's part of the thing here. What we're learning with respect to these kinds of things with regard to Trump is, when you stop and think about it, it has just been nothing but a myriad of scandals. We've been going from one scandal to one emergency, from one hoopla to the next hoopla, and it's as though we never get a break from it. It's as though there is no way for us to break away from it, to get to a position where things are normal. And I think that Trump does this because it makes him feel a little bit more like he's in control. It's one of those things where it's like you protect yourself by basically shrouding yourself in chaos, shrouding yourself in unpredictability and instability. And it's like how the Russians themselves have always sought comfort from chaos. They view chaos as something that protects them, that ensures that their point of view is going to be the one that's basically embraced by society at large, and therefore they want to create as much chaos, as much tumult, as much turmoil as they possibly can, so that they can then ensure that their position is the one that's put forward. And what's so shocking about this is there was that Russian I don't think he was an ambassador. I forget what kind of foreign relations type of governmental worker he was, but he came out there and was essentially laughing at the fact that Comey was taken out. And this, when Trump had made those statements that he thanked him for saying that there was no connection, that almost made it sound as though there was collusion under the table. Now, do I think it's necessarily a constitutional crisis? No, I'm not going to go out on a limb here like Chuck the Schmuck Schumer and the Democrats that have been all over the map on this, but I will go so far as to say that the timing of it is questionable. And that's certainly what Nebraska Senator Ben Sasse had to say about the issue too. And again, it's as you and I had mentioned in a conversation earlier today, Jeremy, it really has nothing to do with Comey himself. It has to do more with the type of distractions that they're wanting to throw out there. Because we know that Dick Morris, and I called him Bill Morris earlier, that is an incorrect statement on my part. See, even I make mistakes, but you see, I live up to my mistakes. But Dick Morris said that this is proof now that we can go after Hillary. We're going to go after Hillary Clinton, even though Donald J. Trump said she was a good person. She's a good person? Really? Where the hell do we come off with that one? Where the hell do we see that as some logical thing, as something that has any type of connotation or connection with reality? Because the more I think about it, and the more that anyone thinks about this in a logical form or fashion, the more we have to come to the inexorable conclusion that this just isn't the case. It isn't true. It isn't actually based or based in reality. It's more subterfuge. It's more off the wall nonsense and chicanery. And it's all designed with the explicit purpose of allowing him to get away with more and more and more. You know, we've already reached the 100-day mark of his administration, and how many of those promises and those things that he said would be so easily accomplished within the first days has he actually managed to accomplish? How many of those promises have come to fruition?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and use a mathematical expression. I'm going to say the absolute value of zero being zero. You know, it's, as I mentioned before, and we've mentioned and reiterated numerous times on previous episodes, he never had any intention or inclination to perform any of those deeds or accomplish them. Now he wants to make all these excuses. You know, see, here's the thing. I see no difference in him and the way that Bill Clinton behaved in 1993 through 96, when the first World Trade Center attack happened in 1993, bin Laden took credit for it. His agents provocateur that were involved in that, everything led back to bin Laden. Clinton did nothing. USS Cole was bombed. Clinton did nothing. The embassy in Tanzania bombed. Clinton did nothing. But what he did do was, well, he made a girl famous in a blue dress, brought back the rebellious desire to smoke Cuban cigars for a lot of people, and pretty much, well, solidified the divorce rate for a whole lot of people in this country and the world over by bombing an aspirin factory somewhere in the Middle East. And I say that when I mentioned the marriage or the divorce rate going up, because that whole thing is, and this is just, you know, me again thinking in a simplistic, logical fashion, a lot of marriages fail because of the lack of romance involved in it. Why? Well, not tonight, honey. I have a headache. Well, since he bombed an aspirin factory, there was a lot of nights where people had a lot of headaches with no relief. Thank you very much, Bill Clinton. Way to go. Bravo. You single-handedly increased the divorce rate throughout the world. Good job. But see, Trump is behaving in the exact same fashion. We have all these threats hurled at the United States, all these terrorist attacks happening all over the world. And what does Trump do? Diversion thing. But here's the thing. Coming up on the 100 days, the wall wasn't built. There was not enough deportations, if any deportations. I don't know of any deportations whatsoever that have been done or conducted of illegal aliens, not illegal immigrants, because they don't exist. Illegal immigration actually does exist in Article 9, Section exists in Clause 0 of the Constitution, but no deportation of the illegal aliens. No stop of terrorism. ISIS is still thriving. No wall is built. So all those things that are coming back to haunt him within his first 100 days that he said he would do, what does he do instead? He drops a couple of bombs. Yeah,
fires the FBI director.
Yeah, and then fires the FBI director, Comey, the comb-over. Yeah, way to go. Yeah.
See, you know what I think is so funny about this, Jeremy, is we've got all of those people that are sitting there saying, well, look at how hypocritical the Democrats are. Look at Chucky Schmucky Schumer. Chucky Schmucky Schumer is sitting there and saying, oh, my God, I loved him when he was not against Hillary, but, you know, I hated him when he was with Hillary, but now that Trump has fired him, I want to get rid of him. Well, remember, Trump and his supporters and acolytes all loved Comey when he brought up the email server scandal that second time. I believe it was in October, when the general election cycle was fully underway. And then they changed their mind. So again, it's this sort of do as I say, not as I do, and we're going to move the political goalposts whenever it's our guy. We will be apologists for our guy. This is the type of spectator sporting event that our system of polity has devolved into, and I don't think it's a good thing. I don't think it's beneficial. I don't think that it promotes us. I think it leaves us in a dangerous position. And unless and until we begin to address this, both as a nation and people, but particularly in our capacity as United States citizens, I don't foresee it improving. In fact, I only see things getting worse from here, because he's going to think now that he has carte blanche to do everything. And we know that the 2018 midterm elections are just looming around the corner, and he is essentially placing the gutless opposition party, or GOP, in an untenable situation. But the fact of the matter is, and the thing that keeps coming back to my mind, Jeremy, is this whole idea that the two mainstay political parties in this once thriving and flourishing representative republic and vibrant community of popular sovereigns of ours have essentially become the flip face of the same titular coin. They are both pushing for exponentially increasing the scope, breadth, and power of the federal government well beyond what our founding fathers ever originally intended for the government to have. Because again, as I mentioned earlier in this evening's program, the founding fathers viewed government as nothing short of a necessary evil, and certainly not something that you would want to entrust with carte blanche and with blanket power and authority. But somehow we have gone down this Theodore Roosevelt path of this leviathan of an administrative state. We don't want to hold people's feet to the fire. We don't want to hold people accountable for their words, deeds, and actions unless they belong to some other political party or some opposition force. And therefore, you see, it is this spectator sporting event where we are pom-pom waving cheerleaders, just essentially pushing out our guy and making whatever excuses are necessary to make our guy look good. But it's bovine excrement. It doesn't work. It doesn't build us up. It doesn't promote anything. And it dumbs down the entire American system of polity.
How many times, Randy, have I mentioned over the past, I don't know, 8 years or so, regarding that we need a strong, vibrant third party? Because the GOP and the DNC have essentially become the right and the left leg of the American body, marching us at breakneck speeds to the edge of a cliff in a very, very deep ravine, only to, just keep walking and walking us over the edge. And here's the thing, folks. Once we go over that edge, those two legs are still going to be kicking. They're going to be kicking like a bullfrog dropped in a pan of boiling hot water. Okay? It's going to be pointless when it reaches that stage, because there's nothing anybody will be able to do. Not the DNC, not the GOP, not we the people. Because at that point, that is when our republic has officially fallen and it no longer exists. Now, what are we going to do before that happens? This is the question. Because the way I'm looking at this, Hillary jumped into the race for two reasons. Number one, to establish undeniable and perpetual plausible deniability with the whole Benghazi thing and the emails and all this other crap that she's embroiled in. Crap that she's been embroiled in with her whole political life.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So she has no qualms about this. She's just gotten better at being able to pass the buck. That's all it is. She's not a smart person when it comes to, going coasting through life and not having to worry about these things. She's a genius with it because she's learning. Her life consists of, this is her learning curve. How can I screw things up so bad to where I can never be held accountable for it? That's reason number one why she entered into the race. Reason number two, to solidify reason number one. She knows that if she entered into the race, Donald Trump would have to use all of these things as political footballs to punt around stupid little arenas while he's paying people legal fees for punching other people in the nose in order to get votes for people to suck up and chew and masticate and swallow all of the crap that he has been spoon feeding them. She knew that he was going to walk all of that back and retract every bit of it. She wanted this. The left, they're working in concert with each other. They want nothing but total destruction and demise of this republic. Why? Because they are cut from a totalitarian socialistic cloth. The Fabian, feng shui moo, if you will. That is what it is. They don't care what we the people have to deal with. They don't care that we the people essentially have gone at each other's throats. Friendships have deteriorated and been dissolved. Family members aren't speaking to each other. They don't care. They want that kind of civil unrest because it's easier to control people in larger groups with that kind of authority and power. That's what they want. If people don't believe me on that, again, reference to Nazi Germany. What was it that Hitler did with everybody that did not fit within the Reich? They were not members, sons and daughters of the Reich. They were labeled as something inferior. And in those labels, no matter which group of people it was, whether it was the Jews, whether it was the Germans who were sympathetic with the Jews, the nomads, the gypsies, whatever the case is, he pitted each and every group against each other in order to break down each and every other group. That's what they did. That is why Hitler rose to power the way he did, and that's why he accomplished all those things that he did accomplish. The same thing is happening here. Both sides effectively have become one. Hillary jumped in because they knew it would solidify something coming in the future. The loss of the House of Representatives and the loss of the Senate, and ultimately in 2020, the loss of the White House. All three of those factors, all three of those are going to go Democratic unless we, the people, remove our heads, wake up, and get back to what our founding fathers had envisioned for this country, otherwise known as the Great Experiment. The experiment is about to blow up in everybody's face because they're wanting to mix, acids in with bases or dump a base into an acid, which you don't do. You do not take a base and dump it into an acid. Why? Because then it causes the acid to splash out and spill and start to destroy things. That is what's happening. You cannot be doing this stuff. The chemistry balance has been broken, and we have to right the ship before an explosion happens and we all choke to death on mustard gas or whatever, proverbially speaking.
Right. And a lot of what it comes down to is that I think both of the political parties have just essentially become addicted to this power, addicted to having government largesse and government spending, and therefore they have to, by their nature, stand in staunch opposition to the true hopes and aspirations of the American people. Why? Because they cannot create. I know this is something that I've oftentimes reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, and that you have also repeated as well. Government, by its very nature, must be parasitic in relation to the body politique of the nation. It's because government is incapable of creating. Government must always take, and they are constantly taking. And it's why there's this old joke that the definition of politics is poly meaning many and ticks meaning blood-sucking creatures. Well, it's not far off. When you stop and you think about the way that Trump had presented himself throughout that disastrous debacle and fiasco known as the 2016 presidential election cycle, he had claimed to be an outsider. I can't tell you how many times, Jeremy, you and I both have heard that phrase, oh, well, we support Trump because he's not a politician, because he's not a political insider, because he will, what is it, drain the swamp? What kind of draining of the swamp do we have here? We see that Michael Flynn was ousted due to alleged connections with the Russian incident. We see that Jeff Sessions wasn't even able to speak about the termination of James Comey, even though it was by his suggestion that the 45th president of these United States of America fires him. Why? Because he had to recuse himself because of what? Russian connections. Now, folks, I know that so many are attempting to claim that this is fake news, that it has no connection or connotation with reality. But remember, there is that old adage, and I know that I've mentioned it before, but where there's smoke, 9 times out of 10, there is also fire. And so where is this fire? Why is it that Trump went out onto the Twitter sphere yet again to have a Twitter storm with his stubby little thumbs, trying to sit there and say that the Russian thing was all a bunch of distraction, had no connection with reality, and was just a way of attacking things. And then he talked about crying Chuck Schumer. Look, I get that Chuck the Schmuck Schumer is a jackwad, but here's the thing. Trump, of his own fruition, has stated on numerous occasions that he likes Chuck the Schmuck Schumer more than he likes conservatives. And remember, it's the Republican Party, not the Conservative Party. Oh, do we need unity? No. Would it be nice? Yeah. But we don't need it because my hair is so perfect and I know so much about everything. Yeah, that's because I have a big, bigly beautiful brain. It just makes me want to go run my head through a brick wall. I think I could gain more intelligence doing that than listening to Trump's explanations as to why Comey was ousted when he is under investigation for this. Now, yes, there is a presumption of innocence in these United States of America. But the more I look at this, the more we have to examine this, the more I am convinced that he is trying to sabotage himself. Why? Because in the end, it will take down the conservative movement. We already see that this type of alt-right mentality is pushing the Republican Party to the left. We've already seen now that they're trying to say that keeping Obamacare to a lesser degree than what it actually was is now conservative. Why? Remember, one of the things that we have always warned about here at Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer, dating back to our premiere episode, which aired on September 11th of 2015, was about this dark and twisted and dangerous game of semantics, where they bastardize terms to make it fit a particular twisted narrative and agenda. Well, at some point, we're going to have to say enough is enough, because what is happening here is they are taking our political movement and they are pushing us away from that key, that very key that will unlock the chains and shackles of governmental servitude, bondage, but above all, tyranny and oppression. And you see, that is by design. That is what we have been warning you about for approximately 2 years. And folks, it shows no signs of improving within the foreseeable future. None whatsoever.
Randy, I think you actually hit the nail on the head when you referred to them as a bunch of addicts. They're addicted to this. Now, here's the thing with addicts, especially, well, let's take a drug addict whose drug of choice happens to be heroin. throughout the whole course of recovery, and I'm surprised that Trump hasn't tried to use that term yet, recovery. "Oh, America, could be great again. We have to go through a recovery process." Here's the thing, okay? I know heroin addicts. I've seen heroin addicts fall to the fate of losing their life. I've seen them come back from that. And here the thing is, the whole notion, whether it's with heroin, whether it's with marijuana, whether it's with alcohol, whatever their vice is, the addiction comes into play with once they get that first taste, once they get that first high, they spend the rest of the time chasing it, trying to get back to that original euphoric state. See, both parties are addicted to this power. They're trying to get back to the original time that they had, the very first time that they tasted this kind of power. And they're doing everything and anything they can in order to achieve that once more. That is the kind of addiction that kills. Who's paying the price for this? It's not them. They're
No.
not the ones doing it. It's the people that are allowing this needle, this syringe full of this toxin to be shoved into the arms of the American people and falling out from it. It has to stop. It absolutely has to stop. People want recovery. People want these things. People want to get back to having a great economy, a great job market, a great housing market. They want their lives to be that of being able to go out and earn and work for everything that they have so that they have a sense of ownership, a pride and ownership of being an American citizen. This is how you kick that habit. You get back to the Constitution. You follow the guidelines of the Constitution, you will have all of those things. Why? Because you'll have them on a smaller level within your own personal life, because you'll have that sense of self-worth again. And then once you start to educate other people about it, bring them in, have rallies, have meetings, so to speak, and teach and educate each other on this. Have that civil discourse, because with the civil discourse, again, that is one of the keys. There was civil discourse throughout the whole time our Constitution was being drafted and ratified. There was compromise. Not the compromise of, well, we'll go ahead and, with Obamacare, we're going to, repeal this and then we're going to replace it. That's not compromise. All that's doing is just finding another track to shove the needle into to try to achieve this euphoric high. It's garbage. That's not compromise. That's imminent death. Stop. Stop being willing. People have to stop
it's all connected to.
They have to stop being so willing to allow these things to happen to them. They have to say enough is enough. And you know what? Damn it. Enough is enough. I've had enough of it. I will not tolerate this. People, you're not so tolerant. Screw your tolerance. You know what? You're going to tolerate what I tell you to tolerate. That's the way it should be. That should be on all of our tongues.
It should be. And what it really comes down to, Jeremy, is that they believe that they know better than we do. It's as Alexis de Tocqueville said, that anyone who supports socialism or any facet of socialism is essentially a new age feudalist. Mm-hmm. They are trying to create this static caste system in which they are the ruling elite, where they have their own structure, their own system, and damn the torpedoes, for lack of a better term, and therefore they'll just continue to act with carte blanche to try and rediscover this nirvana of government spending and government largesse. I mean, what? Hari Krishna is now going to be looking over both political parties. We all have to be one in the wonderful sunlight of socialism. Why? What good does that do? What advancement does that bring forth to the American people? I can tell you right now, not a damn one, not a damn thing. It is not beneficial at all. But unfortunately, we see that both of the political parties are marching to this discordinal, disharmonious nonsense of socialism. And they're just disagreeing about the pace at which the conductor should be playing the piece, should be leading the band or the orchestra to accept. But when we stop and think about it with a modicum of objectivity, what is the one inexorable conclusion that we can draw from all of this? Well, that inexorable conclusion must be that the only way that we're going to bring any meaningful end to this is for us, in our capacity as the true ultimate wielders of popular sovereignty, to put down our collective foot and say enough is enough, as you just did there, Jeremy. But the problem is, what we see recurring over and over again is that so many people have become so disenfranchised with the entire system of polity that they no longer wish to hold their elected leaders accountable. It's because they're so afraid that it's going to lead back to a time of an opponent being, they're wielding the reins of political power. And they are so afraid of that. Why? Because when you look at what happened to the Republican Party in the 2008 presidential election cycle, and again in the 2012 presidential election cycle, we got shellacked. There's no other way to so aptly and appropriately describe what it was that came to fruition there. It was because we didn't stand for anything. If you really want to see what the problem with the Republican Party is, whether it's with Trump at the helm, or whether it was back when Mittens Romnikins was running, or the maverick John McCain was running, it's that the party no longer believed in the platform that it had been promoting at least since 1964. We were not proactively moving for an ideology. We were not proactively encouraging a proper belief system. No, we were going lock, stock, and barrel into just being an opposition party. And in fact, that's part of the reason why I changed the acronym of GOP from being that of Grand Old Party to the gutless opposition party. They're gutless because they are gutless wonders. They don't stand up for anything. And how do you stand up for something when you don't believe in anything? That is the inexorable and self-evident truth that we are going to have to awaken to, both as a nation and people, if we ever truly do wish to spark off an American Renaissance. What does Renaissance mean, ladies and gentlemen? It means rebirth. It's not that America ever ceased being great. The problem with that argument of make America great again is that it presupposes that the United States of America ever once ceased being great. But last I checked, this nation never has ceased being great. But why are we not discussing this? Why are we not discussing what truly makes us such a prosperous nation? Particularly given how relatively brief our course through human events has been. It's because nobody wants to admit that the Constitution is as great of a document as it is.
I have to say this again, and I've said this before, during the debates, in September, October, November, or after November, well, before November, before the election, but leading up to it. Anyways, the backdrops, in the primary, not just the primaries, but
Well,
after
yeah, I guess the ones in the general debate too, having the Declaration of
right.
Independence and the Constitution as a backdrop. Yeah.
People want to make these, you know, these statements to say, well, I'm embarrassed as an American because we've allowed people like Hillary Clinton to jump into the race to try and take out Donald Trump and this. You know what? I'm embarrassed as an American that those were used as backdrops for those two nincompoops up there speaking in front of them. They don't have the class, they don't have the character, they don't have the fitness to stand in front of those documents.
No, they really don't.
And to speak in front of those documents as being the backdrop and the tapestries. You want to talk about embarrassment? That should be, everybody should be embarrassed about that. But they're not. Why? Because to be embarrassed about something like that would mean that, as you were leading up to and ultimately saying, Randy, they would have to acknowledge their responsibility of being willing to hold those individuals accountable. And they're simply not. They are simply not. Every single time we've seen that Trump has taken to Twitter to tweet and chirp about this and chirp about that, whether it was Tommy Lahren being, or Tony Lahren, whatever, Tommy Lahren being, fired from the Blaze. Oh, well, she supports Trump and this, that, and then lo and behold, she turned out to be a supporter of abortion the whole time. I'll admit she had me fooled for a while until she decided that she was going to go on this rant about the Second Amendment, which she got completely wrong. Guess what? I tuned her out. She no longer exists in my reality. Why? Because she's detrimental. When you take individuals and you start to separate them from reality, what true reality is, that is adhering to the Constitution, and you start placing them where they need to be placed in society, or an oubliette, whatever the case you want to put them in. I prefer putting them in the oubliette because that is French for forgetting, to be forgotten. That's where they need to go. People have a problem. Oh, fake news this, fake news this. Why don't you do this? Why don't you stand up and say something about it? Why don't you do something about it? Randy and I have. We have other individuals that have jumped on board. They've got their boarding passes. They've chosen their seats. They have the bigliest of legliest room here on the Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. They are first-class passengers because they get it. They understand. They know that this whole system has become more corrupt than anybody's ever thought at this point in time. Now, 20 years down the line, who knows? It's up to us to make sure that it doesn't get any more corrupt than what it is. You start removing elements that are detrimental to your freedoms, your liberties, your birthright, your obligation to yourself, to your posterity, and to your country, which you owe allegiance to. And a lot of people say, "Oh, well, we have allegiance to the Republican Party. We could never vote for a Democrat." Well, guess what? I've made up my mind. I don't care what letter is next to anybody's name. DRIFUCK, whatever the case is, doesn't matter. XYZ, it doesn't matter what letters next to anybody's name, so long as they are willing to adhere to the Constitution and stand steadfast with it, never pervert it to the best of their ability, never go against it, always hold it up and place that as the supreme law of the land and fulfill their civic obligations and duties in accordance as such. I have no problem voting for them.
Well, I got to bring this up. You talk about not perverting the Constitution. Rand the Mop Paul comes to mind because he went in front of the cameras at the Quaff News Network today and said that he never really liked James Comey, that he never really supported him, and that he didn't give him a vote of confidence at his confirmation. I'm like, ran the mop, who cares? Literally, what impact does this have? Nobody cares what you say or what you think, unless your vote was consequential, unless your vote actually led to a truly noble stance. I don't think standing against James Comey was all that much of a noble stance. But that's the thing. He gets this little narcissistic tinge to him, a little bit like his father, the good doctor, the good Dr. Paul, father of the mob. I don't understand why he would interject himself like that. Look, I'm not going to be one of those people that goes out there and attempts to say that James Comey was the best FBI director since J. Edgar Hoover decided to stop going in drag. What it comes down to is that we have a major problem, a major image problem. With Trump ousting Comey like this, it instantly brings up the question of what in the hell is he trying to hide? He's already refused to release his tax returns. Oh, well, that doesn't matter. He doesn't have to do that by law. Doesn't matter. When it comes to perception in the arena of politics, you have to stay on top of these things. Otherwise, they're going to come back to bite you in the posterior. And they are starting. All of these things are starting to come back and bite us. We are looking feckless. We're looking divided. We're looking ineffectual. We're looking moronic. How did we wind up like this? Well, remember what it was that we kept warning you about, ladies and gentlemen, throughout the course of these past 2 years. Do not buy into that erroneous notion of voting for the lesser of two evils. Look at where it has led us. Do we feel more secure? Do we feel more stabilized now that Trump is in place? Oh, well, Trump has a greatly tax plan in place. Yeah? Increasing the gas tax by $1 a gallon? Why? Here's a question. Why in the hell is the federal government even involved? Should that not, by the proper tenets of federalism, be something relegated to the governments of the several states? That's part of the problem. Where is Rand the Mop Paul, the great constitutionalist, talking about all of these cornucopia violations of the Constitution by this rogue and tyrannical and ultimately illegitimate federal government? He's not there. He's not discussing it. He doesn't want to, because he is just using that as a prop, much like the backdrops that were used at the presidential debates. But in a sense, what has really happened here, folks, is we have been led to a sham. We are seeing a sham unfurl before the shocked and horrified eyes of the nation, and it's not gaining us anything. It's not benefiting us in any way. And what it really comes down to is the government views itself as King Kong here. The government thinks it knows best. It's bigly wonderful, greatly. You know why Trump wanted power? Just to stroke his ego. That's what it's coming across as, and that is certainly the perception that I'm taking from this.
I'm glad you brought up that gas tax, because that completely solidifies my stance on voting for people strictly on the guidelines of them following the Constitution. Now, folks, I did this because I have to draw a line when it comes to my emotional and health well-being. Okay? I cannot allow violations of the Constitution to impact me to where it emotionally makes me distraught, hazes me, or causes me, health instability. I just can't do it. I won't allow it to happen. And here's why. See, This is just another instance of we were right about Trump. We've been right about Trump the whole time, but this is just another nail in the coffin that's going to seal the lid shut. And here it is, right here. See? Here's my Constitution. All right. You see that, folks? Constitution of the United States of America. This happens to be Article 1, Section 9, Clause 5. Go down to Clause 5. And if you can't see that, it's a little blurry. I apologize, but I'm going to read it to you. No tax or duty shall be laid on articles exported from any state. Gasoline tax is a violation of the United States Constitution. So, therefore, Trump imposing this or proposing this to be done as part of his Financial Stability Act and blah, 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 great economic sense is illegal. You now have a president who is willing to violate the law, the supreme law of the land. Interesting. What is it that should happen to, well, I know what would happen to you and I, Randy, if we violate the law. Well, we get, due process comes in most cases, sometimes not really in certain cases, but for the most part, due process happens. We're charged with a crime. The charges are levied by the prosecutor. We go to court and found guilty, we're penalized. Here's the thing. Why is it that anybody who holds any position of authority is allowed to pervert and violate the supreme law of the land, which all laws should be made in pursuance thereof, meaning to follow the Constitution? Why can they violate the law and not be held accountable for it? So here's a question for all of you Trumpletites, you Trumpvidians out there, those who think that the Quaff Commando can do no wrong. Are you going to hold him accountable for violating your Constitution? It's not the Constitution of the United States government. It's the Constitution of the United States. The first three words of the Constitution stipulate, we the people. We ordained this. We are the ultimate wielders of sovereignty. Are you willing, or here's a better question, are you capable? Not so much willing, are you capable? Because with capability comes the willingness. Are you capable of holding him accountable and telling him, yeah, no, sorry, we don't want that? Are you capable of picking up the phone, picking up a pen, writing a letter, making a phone call, punching in some numbers? Because let's face it, most of them, that's all they're good for anyways. But instead of numbers, it's little pictures of Big Macs and French fries that they just, type in there. Are you capable of telling him, no, this isn't what we wanted. We're not going to have this. You're not going to tell us one thing and then do something else. Are you capable of that? That's a bigly question, isn't it?
Yeah, particularly when it comes to the fact that they keep moving the political goalposts. How many times did they sit there and tell us that, they'd be out there, right in the trenches with us, the first time that he would move in a direction that was not conservative? I've had dear friends tell me that, and then they weren't there. They didn't show up for it. They didn't stay the course, for lack of a better term. And where did it lead us? Where did it drive us as a nation and people? Again, it is just leading down this path to perpetual mediocrity. That we are turning to the government as some sort of an end-all, be-all solution for the great plethora of problems that faces us, both as a nation and people. And again, it's not something that works in our best interest. And I know that I've said that a lot tonight, but there's a reason I say it. Because it's as Jeremy and I have oft-times reiterated on previous episodes of Radio Aviation Excellence, the Wright Flyer. Without our fundamental and inalienable God-given rights, we are left with nothing. I do not want to be left with nothing. God forbid, if I ever have children, I don't want it to be that they are unable to exercise their fundamental and inalienable God-given rights without fear of governmental repercussions and ramifications. Why is it that this is not what is discussed? Why is it that the Constitution is not mentioned at the governmental level? You see, everybody's talking about Comey and what Comey said or did, and whether that affects the big quaffly one who wants gas taxes and wants to put tariffs on everything. And so that comes back to impact us. Why was the Constitution nothing more than a mere backdrop in the 2016 election? And why does that continue to be the case to this day? Inquiring minds would certainly like to know.
Well, here's the thing, Randy. You mentioned, all these individuals that say, well, if Trump doesn't do what he says he's going to do, if he starts to shift in the other way, we're going to be right there with you. If that was the case, you know what? I'm going to call BS on all of that. You know why? Because if that was the case, we certainly would have more subscribers than we have for our channel. We would have more comments flooding our inboxes, flooding our shows that we've done. There'd be a plethora of comments, unending, perpetual plethora of comments, likes, shares, mentions, all of these things. And I'm not saying this to try and build up our YouTube channel. I'm not saying this to try and, manipulate things to guilt people into doing this. I'm saying this because it was always their intentions of never accepting responsibility for their actions. If all these people truly, really wanted to stand by us and the things that we say when Trump has decided to do wrong, when he's gone against what he said he was going to do, then where are all of our subscribers? I think that's a very apropos question. I think it's a very reasonable question. And here's the answer. Here's the answer to that question. Those individuals that are diehard Trumpledites, those individuals that say, well, I voted for Trump because, the lesser of two evils, but, I really don't like the way he's going, but hey, he's still the president. We have to support him or else we're going to get somebody like Hillary in the future. Guess what? That line of thinking will guarantee that you get somebody like Hillary in the future. History has shown that. Remember, read my lips, no new taxes. Really? What happened to him? Oh, that's right. One term. One term.
One very ineffectual term.
One very long 4-year waste of time. Because nothing was accomplished. Except turning over the reins of the seat of power for the world's strongest, longest, contiguous, free society and republic ever recorded in the annals of history. Turned over to what? Socialism. Fabians.
There's AstroTurf in the back of my El Camino, and she really likes it. I tell you, you can't.
He knew somebody named El Camino. Did El Camino?
Well, I'm sure he would bed El Camino if he could find her. But
yeah. But the whole point is, how can we really, Randy? How can we trust individuals when they say, "Well, you guys make great points, and we're right. We agree with you, but we still have to support Trump." No, you don't. Again, this goes back to crushing that notion, that failed and flawed notion, that so-called logic of voting for the lesser of two evils. Oh, we didn't have any other choice. Yes, you did. You had 17 other choices. 17 of them. And you threw all of them away except for one. You created your choice. We didn't create your choice. You decided to create your choice because you decided to buy into all the puffery, all the chicanery, all the mysticism and illusions of grandeur the smoke and mirrors, the sleight of hand and mouth. Again, thank you, Penn Jillette, for that. Uh, Nonsensical drivel and crap.
Yeah.
You see, we can only fault Trump for so much, but we can't place all the blame on him. Yeah, sure, he started it, he initiated it, but again, that is all part of the Fabian way. You create the situation, you create the crisis, and then come in as if you are the savior and as if you are the cure for that crisis. That is exactly what he's done. That's exactly what happened in Texas with the Branch Davidians. They created the situation. Why? With the ATF. Oh, we have to show that the ATF is still viable. So, hey, let's go find a bunch of religious zealots who've committed no crime at all and use brute force, kill a bunch of people to show the justification for the existence of an unconstitutional organization and agency of the United States government. Yeah, and people bought into it.
It's subterfuge. It's subterfuge is what it comes down to. It's going against the rights of the people.
That was our very own Crystal Knock. That was our very own Crystal Knock or United the Long Knots.
It was. And having, living in Waco, I remember the press coming down here like a bunch of vultures. You couldn't imagine if you turned on the radio, having so many press trucks there, there's just this hum that goes across every channel that you turn on. The TVs would flicker a little bit just from so much transmission in the area. But the thing that stuck out to my, 8-year-old mind the most, something that's just indelible, was the scent that wafted on the air when they set that place ablaze. And all of the subterfuge that came, all of this unwillingness to hold the actors who were accountable for it, accountable for their actions, that stuck to my memory as well. And that's why I'm shocked and horrified when I see that, again, we are repeating that, but on the opposite side. And maybe not to as bad of a degree, but what is becoming wholesale and what is becoming an undeniable facet of the modern American culture and society is this just absolute unwillingness to hold people accountable for their words, deeds, and actions. And when we don't do that, when we fail to live up to the standards that we need to, because if you recall, that sagacious founding father, Sam Adams, said that the only way for the United States of America to be a strong, vibrant, and robust republic was for the people to be a virtuous people, meaning that we had to live by a high standard or code of morality. We've abandoned that. We've thrown that out the window. And therefore, we're just going to make excuses. We're going to genuflect and go about logical gymnastics to the point where we're frickin' pretzels. And for what? What benefit do we derive from it? How does it help the American people? The answer to that question is it doesn't help the American people. It leaves us downtrodden. It leaves us in a place where the government is now seen as some sort of an end-all, be-all solution. Yet what was it that our founding fathers thought of government, Jeremy? And when we look at the Articles of Confederation, did they trust a central government? Did they want the central government to be infused with all sorts of power? Or did they view that as the very last and most ill-equipped thing to handle the cornucopia of problems that we might face as a republic and people?
Well, they viewed it as the last-ditch resort to come down to it, because they knew that there was something better. And I say that to lead into this. I've mentioned redemption earlier. And redemption ultimately is realized to be, that the cause and effect of what happens when someone makes a mistake. Here's the thing. A lot of people that I've talked to, and I'm sure Randy, you've talked to them as well. In fact, we've conversed with individuals numerous times on various different internet information superhighway and cyber space, places, and chat rooms, and social media and the like. I said, well, I voted for Bush and it was a mistake. I voted for Daddy Bush and it was a mistake. And then I voted for this person. Then I voted for this person. And what they're failing to realize is that you only get to make one mistake. Mistakes only happen once. Every time something of that occurrence happens again, it's no longer a mistake, it's a choice. The first time is a mistake, second time is a choice. How many times are people going to make the choice to continue to allow these things to happen? The founding fathers made mistakes. They made the mistake of trusting the English, crown to be able to govern the colonies. Well, that only happened one time. We had the American Revolution. And it hasn't happened since then. Because they were not going to make that choice. They made the mistake and they learned from it so they would not end up making that choice. And this is the problem. People are not learning from their choices or from their mistakes. They make the mistakes, they don't learn from it, so now they have nothing but a bunch of bad choices. Well, I'll never make that mistake again. You're right, you won't, because you only get to make the mistake one time. You're right, you won't make that mistake again. You'll make bad choices from that point on until you learn from that initial mistake. And it's going to be a perpetual thing until you learn from your mistake. Example. And folks, again, my simplistic logic tells me that, along with other things and rattling around inside my empty head, and I wish I had my helmet because some things are starting to fall out. But anyways, I digress. This is a good example. Using a circular saw or any kind of electric saw and not paying attention, making the mistake of not reading the operator's manual or learning how to operate that saw properly, you cut your fingers off. Bloop, there they go. Now, here's the thing. You don't have your fingers. If they're not surgically reattached in any way, shape, or form, and now you just have this, well, the next time, you're not going to be able to make the mistake of cutting your fingers off because they're not there. Instead, the next time you choose to operate that power tool, whatever it may be, in an improper manner, well, then now you start to, essentially, the more you choose to do that, pretty soon you won't have an arm. And then you won't have anything else. That is what's happening to our republic. People are making the choice to continue to dismember ourselves. That is what's happening. We cannot continue to do this. You have to learn from that initial mistake of realizing what it is that you voted for. If you voted for socialism, you cast a vote, and it turns out that the individual is not adherent to the Constitution, turns out to be a socialist, even a socialist light, or a communist light, or some Nike shoe wearing, bedsheet donning, Kool-Aid drinking, hail bop troglodyte. If you continue to choose to cast the vote for those individuals, it's no longer a mistake. But on the other side of that, individuals like myself and Randy, if we do not make the choice to educate you, to show you the error of your ways, to enlighten you, to empower you with the knowledge of the Constitution and what it means to be an ultimate wielder of sovereignty. If we don't make that choice the first time, that's a mistake. If we continue to not make that choice, that is a choice. It's no longer a mistake because it's perpetual bad behavior. That is what this is going on and happening. We cannot stop this. You don't want your children to continually to do bad things, to make bad choices. You intervene, you stop them, you discipline them, and you correct them. If you're willing to do that for your children, because it's the right thing to do, how can you justify that if you're not willing to do it for yourself? You have to take care of yourself first before you can be effective or good for anybody else, including your children. Stop being perpetually bad. It's bad. We can't tolerate badness. Badness is badly.
Yeah. Well, and that's what it comes down to. We have to be responsible for ourselves, and we have to hold our elected leaders and each other accountable. Now, with that said, it is time for us to begin our descent. I'm going to go ahead and send the flight attendant back for one last round of alcohol. No, folks, I didn't terminate her after the solo flight. And I won't terminate her again tonight until after she has served the alcohol. As always, I'm your captain, Randy Wright, and I've been joined on this evening's program by my first officer. We invite you to leave any questions, comments, concerns, or even topic suggestions you might have, either here in the comment section on our YouTube page, or on our Facebook page, or on our Google Plus page. And on top of that, we invite you to follow us at Twitter with the Twitter handle @RadioAviationEX. One more time, folks, that's @RadioAviationEX, and there you'll find the departure board that lists my personal Twitter account, Jeremy's personal Twitter account, the Blogspot account that is just chock full of useful information, and then there's the Cafe Press account. Tell them a bit about the Cafe Press account.
Well, the Cafe Press account is a place where people can go and stop by.
And
not be terminated. And, you essentially, folks, you can make the mistake of going on there and leaving and not showing any support, more so for yourselves rather than for us. But if you want to do that repeatedly, back and forth, that's fine. That's actually a choice I can live with. I'm sure Randy can live with that choice as well.
I'm sure, yeah.
Yeah, but it is, folks, there's a lot of goodies and novelties on there. Various different accoutrements, if you will. Some things that can be viewed as attachments, or maybe even, if you want to get back to simplistic way of things, like me, bumper stickers, I'm going to start referring to them as vehicle apps. Why not? Apparel, shirts, hats, t-shirts, sweatshirts, and yes, folks, we even do have undergarments for sale on there. Stop by, check it out. Make a choice.
Yeah, can't go wrong with it.
But don't let it be a mistake. Okay?
Yeah. We don't want that. And we're not going to terminate you. No, as always, folks, thank you for tuning in. We hope to see you again next time. Please do